Welcome back to the Lingual Twist. I'm Dr. E, and this is my co-host,
Dr. Daniel Smiles.
And today we're going to be talking about learning styles. Because I think that when you get to dental school, the most important thing for you is studying. That takes up a lot of your time.
Yeah.
And how successful you are in studying. And there are different types of learners. And I don't think people are even aware that there are different types of learners.
Yeah, I feel like I convinced myself that I'm one type of learner. My learning style specifically, we're going to get more into it throughout the episode, but I think I'm more of I don't know what it's called. I have to teach it to someone, and once I can verbally teach it to someone, that's how I know it. Even if I don't know the material, if I'm just explaining it to you like a teacher would, reading off the paper or whatever, in that moment and in that process, I'm understanding it more. And that's how I learn. So what I do now is I take a video of myself, my phone camera's on, and I'm staring at myself on my phone camera, and it looks a little silly if you're watching me from afar, but I'm just talking to my phone screen.
You don't get distracted by your own face?
No, I need to look at myself when I study because it actually keeps me more in tune and focused in.
I feel like whenever I talk, and now you're going to notice it, my jaw deviates to one side.
It does.
And it drives me nuts.
But who cares?
I mean, if I'm talking to myself, I'll be like mesmerized by my jaw.
Yeah, no, I definitely I hear that because there are times where I'm talking with my camera, and I'm just thinking, why is it like where did that I've never noticed that about myself. What's going on
here?
That's
what I'm saying.
Yeah, but or even like what I used to even put a mirror in front of me and I would just talk to someone because I need to have that communication aspect going on.
I think that there are different types of learners. I think the first step in mastering a skill is learning. It's not like you're already on the study and mastering stage when you're talking to yourself, teaching that person, because that's when you really learn and internalize it. But the first time you hear it or see it or feel it, the intake is important also. How the student's taking in the information, then how they process it and how they apply it. It's actually broken down into a few different steps.
So where does someone, okay, for someone like me that's not well versed in this at all, where does one start? How, like, I don't know anything about my learning type. I'm clueless. Where do I start? There are many times where I'm taking up more time to try to figure out my learning style than I actually am learning.
Right.
So what's your advice on that?
The first step is having the teacher and understanding the teacher and their main points. Sometimes you'll get a teacher who's super interactive. Sometimes you'll get a teacher who's a little bit more dry or a little bit more boring. No matter what, that's the person who's mastered and knows the knowledge, and they're trying to give it over to you. So they're giving and you're the recipient. And so it's really up to the professor as to how they want to run their classroom and give over that information. Some people have an active classroom. Some people have a flipped classroom. Some people have a sage on a stage model. All those different models. A sage on a stage, let's go backwards to forward for those who don't know. A sage on a stage is someone who's very well versed in something, and they're going to stand on a stage and basically have a monologue, just
like a TED
talk to you. Yeah.
Okay.
TED Talks, I feel like, are like master stage on stage. Mostly it's like
that in a smaller version.
Yeah, but maybe not that captivating. Okay. So stage on a stage is what school always used to be. One person in the head of a big auditorium, and that's just how it is.
Gotcha.
Okay. Then you go home, you can't even listen to lectures in the past years because there was no recordings, but you'd go home, review your notes, look at the textbook, and master it. Then there was something called active classroom, in which the students are actively participating, understanding that when you are involved in the process, you better understand the material. And then there's like the flipped classroom idea, where the students are doing a lot of peer-to-peer learning as well, as opposed to just the faculty doing the teaching. It's also the students. That's why it's like flipped, right?
So in high school, we actually had the flipped classroom situation, and I personally hated it. Maybe it was a little bit different. The professor would assign us like readings. We would have to do those readings before class and essentially teach ourselves all the material. And then we would come to class and it would just be, what questions do you have on the material that you just learned? And if you didn't learn the material, then you can't participate in the class. You have no idea what's flying. And the professor wouldn't teach you any of the lectures, none of that. He would just answer the questions that you had about the reading assignments. So is that kind of like a flipped classroom, or is that?
Yeah, so that is a version of the flipped classroom, and some people love it, some people hate it. I think there's a benefit to peer-to-peer learning where you're getting the feedback, you're being spoken to on someone who's at your level, your age range, your peer, right? And so your contemporary, let's call them. And so sometimes you'll respond better to that than somebody who's older or has different personality than you. You don't really see them as your peer,
Yeah.
giving you over that information. Sometimes, honestly, peer-to-peer learning, they have a different way of reading it, interpreting it, and then again, like talking to yourself in the mirror, except it's not a mirror, it's now your friend. So I think that's the concept of peer-to-peer learning and that flipped classroom idea. When I try to teach, I try to do a little bit of everything, understanding that there are three different types of learners. So auditory, where you want to just hear it and be like, I got it. Most people are actually not like that. Auditory, I think, was probably one of the first ways people thought that people learn, but really there's auditory, right? You hear things and that's how you do it. Visual, like you see something and you're able to do it. But then there's the tactile feeler who really needs to be involved in the process and understand it to be able to master the material.
Yeah, I think I'm that one, honestly, but that's the most energy consuming one, right? You have to really be invested in it. You really have to put in the time and the work and really be involved with it to learn it, which makes sense because now you're actually one to one with what you're learning. But I think that just takes the most time. Does it?
So yes and no. So for example, in front of us, we have these 3D printed teeth that I printed out on 400 times the size for my students. Because if you know anything about me, I teach dental anatomy and occlusion. So I need them to understand what the anatomy looks like. And when they're coming in, they really have no concept of a tooth. They don't mesial, distal, occlusal, and central groove. These words don't mean anything
None of
to
that.
them.
Yeah.
So I was like, how could I help not only the auditory and visual learners, but the tactile learners? So I came up with this idea of scanning teeth and then 3D printing them in massive form so that I could literally even point to them with my finger. I don't even need an explorer or a smaller tool to show them the central groove, because when you blow it up 400 times the size, it's just so obvious as to what you're pointing to. And it also gives them something tactile, something to hold, something to touch and feel. And that's how they learn. And so I think that the classrooms, even within the graduate school arena, are really trying to push to address the issues of all learners, different types of learners. Because when you have a diverse class, which all the schools have, there's no way that 100% of those students are just going to be auditory or visual
100%.
or tactile. I think a lot of people in our school or in our specialty, like of dentistry, tend to be tactile learners to a certain extent. We like working with our hands. We like to feel and touch. I remember when I was little, my mom used to ask me what I liked about shopping so much, right? Some people get a high, like, a dopamine fix from just ordering stuff online and getting it from Amazon. I think that's fun, but there's something about like walking through the malls and like touching the clothing and feeling it.
Yeah.
And, like just the whole experience, the smells and sounds, it's immersive when you go to a mall, whereas online shopping, like, yeah, it's fun. I got something new and like it comes in the mail and you're like, woo, I don't even remember what I ordered. But there's something about being in that full immersive experience. And I think that in dental school, we should try to create that experience for our students.
I fully agree with that concept. No, you're completely right. Yeah, if you are involved with it, if like I remember whenever I was studying dental anatomy and occlusion, I actually bought a set of like giant teeth, even bigger than the ones that we have in front of us. I think they're like 1,000 times the size. It's the size of like my hand, each tooth. And I remember whenever I was studying for the class, I was actually able to see every single groove. Oh, that's the central groove. That's the distal groove. Like I understood what I was looking at, and it just made so much more sense as opposed to looking at a 2D image on my iPad, And yeah, so I really do feel like that's the most, I mean, at least for me, yeah, it is really helpful.
But in terms of your didactic courses, I think people ask me questions about didactic courses a lot. They see me as the first face they see when they get to dental school, so they feel comfortable asking me a lot of questions. And one of those questions are when they get to their basic science classes, like, how am I supposed to study?
Yeah, completely.
I get it all the time. And different study approaches are going to work for different people, right? And I try to tell them that right off the bat. First, you have to be self-aware. What kind of learner are you? And there's a quiz actually that I posted for your class. I don't know if you remember, where you sit and you take this quiz to understand what type of learner you are. So then you find out what you are based on the answers provided, and then you learn a little bit about how to set yourself up for success. So sometimes it's a study group. Sometimes it's a dry erase board that's necessary to draw things out and understand them and bring them to life. Other times it's studying in quiet. Other people like to study with noise. So I think that there are different various approaches to what you could do to be successful in terms of a didactic course. In terms of your hands-on courses, like the drilling and filling, as they call it, right? The restorative courses, the fixed and prosthetic courses. I think that until you are in clinic, it's very hard to simulate, even in a simulation lab. We try, we have the mannequins, we have, the articulators, we have all that stuff set up. But understanding the workflow of seeing that patient coming in a edentulous, taking that impression on them, capturing the anatomy with their, movable mucosa, reabsorbed ridges, all that stuff, and then handing them that complete denture and seeing that life-changing smile, like, you can't really understand it. You can't understand the importance. You can't understand, like border molding with green stick compound. It's everyone's dream.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But I think there's that, and I also think there's a really hard, I don't want to call it fight, but
Between what?
We've come from an analog world and we're very fast moving into a digital world that changed from, like, it was like a little slow in the beginning, and now it's taking off into a world of AI and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So how are we going to teach in a 4-year dental school program? And some schools are even now a 3-year program. How are we going to teach the fundamentals and build a strong foundation for our students upon which all the digital and AI is built? And I think it's hard to try to balance that. What are we going to take away? Where are we going to make the time for the digital? You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. But I do think that the digital aspect is amazing. I'm not really talking more about dentistry right now, but like with the studying, like I personally, ever since like AI came out, like for example ChatGPT, that changed my entire trajectory of how I study. You know, I let's say I have a PowerPoint from a pharmacology class, and it's really hard for me to understand the concepts, these words. I can barely read them. They're very complicated. What do? There's 2 new things I started doing now. First thing I do is I put the entire PowerPoint slide into ChatGPT, and then I say, "Hey, I don't know anything in this. Pretend you're my faculty and teach me this entire PowerPoint and be very detailed. Give me examples, break it down like I'm a 5th grader." And it gives me a long like essay, but it really breaks it down like a story and it teaches it to me. And then what I do is I read that 2 or 3 times. After I read that 2 or 3 times, now I can watch the lecture because now I have like a pretty good background in like what I just read.
Yeah.
I'm not going in blind. And then now I listen to the professor and it sticks more. And then the last thing I do is when I'm, let's say, driving or have like free time in between, there's this new website that came out. If you guys want to check it out, it's called notebook.lm. And what this does is you put it in the PowerPoint slides again, and it's one click of a button, and it turns all your PowerPoint slides. I would do one at a time because the more information you give AI, the more vague it's going to be because it's trying to fit all that information. So I would do like one PowerPoint at a time, and it turns your entire PowerPoint into a podcast. And
Really?
it's so cool. I'll show it to you. And what it does, it's a guy and girl podcast, and it's basically there's always like one dominant one, and then one that's more submissive isn't just listening, and that's like the us in the example.
Student.
Yeah, it's like the student and teacher exactly. I think they copied it from us.
I think so.
But it's the student teacher vibe, and just listening to it passively, I think really helps a lot because while you're listening to them, you're like saying, "Oh, I remember my professor said that. Oh, I remember that example that happened in ChatGPT." So it's just a constant repetition of different sources. I feel really, really helps me out, and I think it would help out a lot of people as well.
If you could give one more suggestion. So you have ChatGPT, this notebook.lm, and one other thing that you've started to use in dental school.
So, like I said, what I love to do is I love to either talk to someone or talk to myself. And when I say talk to myself, I don't just mean reading the slide out loud. I mean talk to myself as if I'm teaching. Like I actually kind of learned it from you. It's whenever you would teach us like you would say, like we're babies, like we don't know anything because we're people that just came from undergrad. We have no knowledge of dentistry, right? So you teach us from the ground up, and that builds a solid foundation. I'm talking to him like how he doesn't know anything, and I'm saying, okay, so this is the story. We have this antidiuretic drug. What does it do? How does it work? Okay, imagine I have this and this and this. Okay, now I'm gonna have to get rid of it from my body. Why would I take that? Oh, I would take that, and then I just make like the dumbest mnemonics in the world, and I think though that really sticks, like the mnemonics that make absolute no sense, and it'll stick with you for years. And that's what I like to do. I like to talk out loud. I realize that when I'm in a library studying and I'm kind of in silence, I can only do that towards the end of my studying after I basically now I'm just reviewing because I need to have that talking out loud sensation, that moving my mouth, moving my hands, being physical while I'm doing the work. I think it's a kind of mix of like auditory learning slash being, what was it, active learning? Tactile learning.
Yeah.
Because I'm physically moving, I'm physically talking, I'm looking at pictures, but it's all happening loud. Because I feel like when we think in our brains, we kind of like convince ourselves that we know what we're doing, but we really don't. Like there are times where I'm studying and I'll like gaslight myself and I'll be like, yeah, if I see this on the exam, I'll know it. It makes sense. That never works. It never makes sense on the exam. But that's the thing. Also, another thing that I think we could talk about, it's the different types of learners, but also I feel like what I do most of the time is I just learn for the exam and then it just leaves me. And I thought that that's maybe just like with the basic science courses and with the dental courses, it might stick more because I'm more interested in it. But I'm starting to see it even happen in the dental courses because there's like a little bit of, there's like a lot of them, So I'm not really studying it because I'm like passionate about it, which I am, but I'm just studying it just so it's like another thing to check off the to-do list. I'm like, I have to do pros right now because I really have to study for my ortho exam. So I'm kind of just doing it just to get it out of the way as opposed to doing it with like a full heart. And that really scares me because it's like I'm going to be going to clinic, or not even with clinic, I'm going to just be moving on for the rest of my life and like being a dentist. And I don't know these things that I should know. You feel, and it's another thing that a lot of people say is, yeah, but whenever you're in clinic, it's going to happen so many times. It's kind of going to just be intuitive and you're going to get it with the more practice you have, which is true. Of course, like with anything, repetition is key, but it kind of just makes me feel bad in the moment where it's like, I've been studying, for example, like prosthodontics for a year, for like 5 months, 4 months already. And why is it that the basic things that I should be knowing with the back, like in my sleep, I'm like forgetting? Like there are times where I'm looking at an occlusal room and I'm like, what was that called again?
Well, that I think has to do with exhaustion. I think that it's very hard to recall when you're tired. And I think that some students feel that when they pull an all-nighter, it will benefit them.
It doesn't.
I actually did better in my D2 year than my D1 year. In D1, I really like was pulling all-nighters, studying till the wee hours, waking up early in the morning to review. Whereas in my D2 year at 10 o'clock, I just shut down. I was like, I'm done. I'm done studying. Yeah. Whenever I was done studying, I was like, we study and we get a good night's sleep. I'm a good early riser. So I'd like hop out of bed at like 5 to review my notes. But like at 10 o'clock, I was done. I needed my brain to rest and absorb and to marinate the information. So when I needed to recall it, I recalled it.
I really have to get better with that. I keep telling myself that I gotta sleep, I have to sleep, but it's that like guilty feeling when I'm in bed at, for me, early would be like, actually early in my head is 11 o'clock. That's like someone's 8 p.m., 9 p.m. type.
Right.
And when I'm in bed at 11, I feel so guilty. And it's like, I could be studying for another hour or 2 hours. But what's helping me now is telling myself, Danny, you might as well go to sleep at 11 or just be in bed, even if you're not sleeping, because my body is so used to not sleeping at that hour. I tell myself, you're relaxing, your eyes are closed, and you're like, don't even have your phone on you. If that's cheating. Be in bed, close your eyes. You're not sleeping, that's fine. As long as your body is like at a relaxed state, I feel like it's something. And you'll wake up at 5. You'll have like 2 hours of studying better than as opposed to you sleeping at 1 and then waking up at like 7 and like only having like 30, 45 minutes to study.
Can you wake up at 5 though?
I've been doing it.
Oh,
But right now I've been going to sleep at 1 and waking up at 5,
okay. So
and
4.
that's hurting. Like I feel my body like destructing.
A lot of times I can't relate to this, but I've done a lot of research and studying on how people study and how people function at different hours of the day. I'm not a night owl. My sister, my husband love to start working at 11 o'clock. I'm the type of person who, the second I wake up, I'm like, okay, let's be productive, let's get stuff done. And other people just, their functioning clock turns on at 10, 11 o'clock at night. So I think that I have to think about it, because I believe that if that's the hours in which you are most productive, maybe it doesn't make sense to shut off at those hours. Maybe it pays to catch 2 more hours on the other end. Because once you have the information in your head and you feel productive and you lie down in bed and say, okay, I've studied, I put in the effort, you close your eyes, like, you don't just see black, you literally see your review notes.
I hate that.
So then you're like, literally your brain is still like studying as you sleep. But if you're just starting to be productive at 10, 11 o'clock and then you go to sleep at 1, you really only got 2 or 3 hours of productive studying time, where my productive studying times are in the early afternoon. The second the sun sets, my body goes into panic mode. Like, the day's over, I can't start studying. It's over. I had to have got it done before the sun sets. That's
I feel
just
bad for you in the wintertime.
Yeah, it's rough. But like, that's why I don't understand how people start being productive when it's already dark out. I'm like, you understand after dark comes light, and then it's morning and the day of test. Like, how could you do that?
Yeah.
But everybody's different, different styles, different strokes for different folks. I think it's important. That's why I think the most important thing to be successful, not only in school but in life, is know yourself and understand that not everyone's like you. So when people come to me and ask me for advice, I tell them how I did it. I tell them how I learned, and therefore that's how I did it. But you need to know yourself. What type of learning you are, when are your most productive hours, and then apply that to a learning style.
But that begs for the main question. How do you know yourself? I mean, I'm talking for myself and for all the viewers out there. How does one begin to know themselves? And I know it sounds like a stupid question, but I don't think it is. How do you know, like, truly know yourself without, like, lying to yourself on, oh, this is how I am. This is how, I don't know. I'm in my second year of dental school, and there are still times where I'm thinking, like, what's my study style? I still don't know if I figured it out yet, and it drives me nuts. As much as I like to say that, like, oh, I'm a this learner, I'm that. There are times where I'm just at a loss, and I just feel like I'm moving along the waves, just doing what I think I'm supposed to be doing, but I don't know if it's actually working or not.
So I think that there are 2 important things that you actually just said. One is that you're a D2 dental student. This is not your first rodeo, and it's not first grade. You've gone through 1st through 8th, then through high school and college, and you're a D2 dental student. So something you've been doing along the way has worked. Okay. The second thing that you said was, I think, riding the wave and doing what you're supposed to do.
Flowing in the ocean.
And I think that feeling of riding a waves, I mean, life is like that, right? I mean, the only time you see a flat line is when someone's dead. Life, the fact that you see those ups and downs means that you're alive and you're riding the wave. And sometimes you're going to be at the top of the wave, and sometimes you're going to fall to the bottom. But that means you're alive. Because if you were flatlining and just walking across, you'd be dead. So,
wow. Look at you with the analogies.
It's my specialty. Usually it's baking and Disney, but I'll give you a real life one now. Wow. So I think being in college and being in grad school is a lot about self-growth, knowing who you are, learning how different people react in real situations in real time, whether it's how your friends treat you when it comes to exam time, how you react to things when you're sleep deprived. And it really gives you food for thought for how you function as a person, because when you get out into the real world, situations will arise where you are exhausted, where you are stressed, and you have to be mindful. Like, I know, oh, here's a great one for you, Danny. I know that when I'm hungry, I act
crazy.
So we feed Danny, and then Danny's normal again.
This is true. This is
true. So that's part of your self-awareness. Like whenever you call and you're super stressed out and you're talking to me and I'm like, Danny, what did you eat today? You're like, I don't even remember. I was like, do you not remember because you didn't eat today? And then you come and then you call me back on FaceTime while smiling and you say, I ate 2 slices of pizza. And
then
now
I
I'm
feel
happy.
much better. Yeah,
So
this is true, guys.
so that's like a basic example of self-awareness and things that you'll become more aware of in graduate school. And I think being mindful of that is really important. How I was mindful when I got a grade that disappointed me, because life is full of disappointments, and we as society are actually not good at setting our children up for losses and how we process those losses slash not winning.
Yeah.
Learn to lose. Not everyone needs a trophy, and I understand it hurts. Yeah, it's really frustrating not to get the trophy. Working so hard, waking up for practice and not winning gold or silver or bronze. That doesn't mean you're not an Olympian. You're still in that pool. You're in lane 7. It took you everything to get into lane 7. So even though you didn't walk away with silver, bronze, or gold, it doesn't mean that you're not amazing. It doesn't mean that you're not talented. It just means that there's somebody in the world who's more talented than you, and that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
You can't be the best at everything. Because if you try and that's what you consider success, being the best at everything, you are going to be disappointed time and time again, which will lead to depression and anxiety, hence the anxious generation. Because you're setting yourself up for, I always need to win. And if I don't win, I'm not good. I'm not worthy. And you are worthy and you are good. But there always are going to be people who are better than you and people who are worse than you. And maybe there's a category where you are the best, and that's great, fantastic. But it's just not going to happen in every category of life.
Yeah, that we're gonna snip that there. That was that was really great, and I think that's the hard part about being in a professional program, because we were all, for the most part, the best in undergrad. They don't dental schools don't accept mediocre, low. Like that's just how it is. It hurts to hear that, but that's how it is. They accept the top of the bunch. So because we're all coming with that mindset of, oh,
Always being successful.
I was always the best, and now being in a cutthroat program where it's hard and it's a lot, and you don't have like those 24 hours in a day that I had in undergrad turned to like 9 in dental school. I'm in a room filled with the best.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's kind of daunting, and it can get hurtful sometimes, where it's like a new feeling I have where I feel, I don't know how to put it into words, where
every day was a win. Every
day was a win.
You felt good about yourself. It was so easy. You're like, all I have to do is show up at school and someone's going to tell me I'm the best. And then I walk away from school and feel really good about myself.
Yeah, not to say that it was easy. It wasn't. But yeah.
You applied, you did the work, and it clearly paid off. There's an exact correlation.
Yeah.
And now you're like, I studied really hard. How did I end up with that B or C?
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's what I'm saying. I think that graduate school is a time you have to allow yourself the time for self-growth. And when you're upset, when you're frustrated, when you're happy, pause, acknowledge the emotions. It's okay to feel all the emotions. And ask yourself, what caused me to feel this way? What caused me to feel this happy? What's causing me to be sad? What's at the root of it? Like, why am I so happy? Why am I so sad? What's really bothering me? Because what really sparks joy? Why did that make me so happy? Right? Like sometimes somebody does something and we always want to try to build people up. And if the reason they're happy is because they put someone down, if that's what really made them happy, like, oh, I got them this time. Did that make you a better person? Right? You have to ask yourself, why did I do that? Because the guy is an asshole. And so now I'm going to be an asshole. And now I'm one up on him. But how did that make the world a better place? And I'm sure we've all done it. You know what I mean? Yeah. You want to push someone down to make yourself stand taller. But in the end of the day, like, what is your goal? I say in class, I always ask WH questions. Why do we do it? Where are we doing it? When are we doing it? How are we doing it? All those questions are so important as a provider, as a diagnostician. But it's also important to look within ourselves. When am I going to act that way? How did I get here? What's the purpose? Why am I doing it? How could I be better? Like, always asking yourself those questions.
Yeah, wow. I feel like that's one thing that I really gained from your class, is you really put that out there of the why, how, when, what's going on, like what's the root of it, why is it doing this? If like you always say, if you know the why, everything will just fall into place. And I catch myself now asking myself that, not even always to do with school, predominantly in school when it comes to civil classes, but also in my personal life. I'm like you just said, I'm feeling a certain way. Dang, why are you feeling like that right now? What's going on? And then a lot of people don't like to do it because people don't really like to self-reflect. It could be scary.
Because it's vulnerable.
It's very vulnerable, exactly. But I feel like once you step into that vulnerability and you really lean into that why, you learn so much more about yourself. And I feel like it really makes you so self-aware, and it makes you overall a better person because you're allowing yourself that vulnerability. So now you become more open to other people and being able to be vulnerable with others. If you can't be vulnerable with yourself, how do you expect to be able to open up to other people?
Brene Brown always says it's called wholehearted. That if you could be the reason people who are able to be vulnerable, they're able to enjoy life so much better, and they're wholehearted people. They're people who are able to live life with their whole being, their whole heart, because they know what it is to be vulnerable. They know they understand the risks. They could be high. When you're vulnerable, you're telling someone something really private, really important, right? And you're opening yourself, exposing yourself to hurt and shame and all this other stuff. But in return for opening yourself, you're also allowing yourself the possibility of true happiness and that wholehearted type living, because someone could really see you and you could really see them and build that relationship. And so Brene Brown, you should listen to her lecture on vulnerability if you haven't. It's a TED Talk. That's a TED Talk.
What kind of learning style was that?
I mean, I guess there's a stage on a stage, but she's amazing. She's so captivating. I love her. I love all her books. But yeah, that wholehearted living, to open yourself up, asking yourself those questions, leaning into the discomfort, and knowing that leaning into that discomfort, life is messy and dirty and not always fun. But if you allow yourself to get that way, you will end up much happier.
Definitely agree with that. And I think that's where it comes back to the whole studying and the different learning styles. I feel like once you accept that every exam is not going to be a win, and that's okay because I tell myself this all the time. My biggest fear in the beginning of dental school, my first year, even before starting, while in the program, it was always, I'm so scared to get kicked out. I'm so scared to fail. And you remember, I would tell you this all the time, like, Doc, I'm so scared. I'm scared I'm gonna fail out. And you would ask me, Danny, is there a reason why you should feel scared? Like, is something happening? Like,
why?
Why exactly? And then I would say, no, there is no basis to my statements, but it's just something that I'm feeling. And it was that constant fear of failing, and that's the same fear I had with the DAT. And I think that could be another podcast talking about the DAT. But I pushed my exam off 6 times because I was just so afraid to fail. And
because have you ever failed before?
no.
It goes back to my concept. We've raised this generation to be anxious, to be nervous to do things for fear of failure, because we've always made our kids winners and they haven't learned how to deal with the disappointment and the truth about not always being the winner.
Yeah, and I think it's to all the parents out there and the upcoming parents out there. I think that's something that's really important to instill in your kids at such a young age, is that it's okay to not be the best, and it's okay to fail, because failure is something where you can try again, and you'll feel better about it. I always say to the people that took the DAT more than once, like, for the people that took it twice, and the people that took it 3 times especially, I always say I look up to you guys so much more, because you guys had that smack in the face of not doing well the first time, especially in the DAT, where you get your exam score seconds after you press that end button. And to feel that lowness and to say, you know what, I'm going to do it again and study again and try again, and then take and get the grade you want. Or even, let's say you fail again, and then you say, you know what, I'm not going to stop and I'm going to try again. I think that takes such courage and such self, I don't even know the word to, like, I always say, I don't think I would have been able to ever do it again. I don't think, not because of the exam is hard, not because of the hardness of it, but because of the mental toll that it takes to actually prepare for this exam. That to me is the hardest part of this exam.
Yeah, but they always say it's not how hard you fall, but how you get up, right? And everyone's gonna fall. That's never a question.
You're scared to fall. That's the only thing.
But what happens when you do?
You'll get up.
You get up.
You'll cry. You'll say, wow, that sucked. That was... But guess what? Your body, when it goes through a traumatic experience, right? You fall, let's say, physically fall. What happens? You heal. And they say that...
And it might take work and support. You might need a cast. You might need stitches. But you have to allow yourself also the time to heal. You don't go to the emergency room, get stitches, and come back and be like, all better.
Yeah.
No, it has to heal now. You can't run on that foot. You have to be on crutches. And it's that time to heal, to process, to know yourself, to understand. Again, bringing it back full circle to our learning styles. You need to let yourself learn who you are. Yeah. Who's Danny? Who's Golda? Who's Dr. E? Who's Dr. Daniel Smiles? Look at yourself and say, how could I help this person succeed? Because if it wasn't me and it was another person, what would I tell them? How would I treat them? Because we're all really harsh on ourselves. We're hard on ourselves. And we need to learn to be kinder to ourselves to help us understand ourselves and therefore make a better person tomorrow than we are today.
Exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, with that, I think we should end this episode of The Lingual Twist.
And as always, I'll see you guys next time and have a good one.